Hello, wonderful humans of EDT 570. We are here. It is week number 8. Very excited. We're here. The big project is done. Presentation is all set. You're going to respond to each other in the discussion board for week 8, doing reflective practice about reflective practice presentations. It's perfect. It's like the most meta, like nesting dolls example ever, I think. I like it. Hopefully you're like, yeah, that was a good call. So this week is rather chill, certainly compared to last week. We're ending on Friday, March 1st. Things are due before midnight on March 1st. And your discussion is going to be, you can share this right away, right? Share your reflective practice presentation. Make sure that it's viewable by everyone. So copying the link and viewing it in an incognito or private window is the way to make sure you're doing that. Your initial post can be just, here's a link to my presentation. Congrats everyone, we made it. And grab some popcorn. Here's our film festival of sorts. Or not, or just be like, here it is, and then 2 thoughtful replies. Reply to everyone if you would like, and that's your big thing this week, or that's like the assignment of the week. The most of your work of this week is going to be part 3 of Dewey's The Training of Thought. You've gone through 2/3 of it. You're on the home stretch. I'm going to share a couple things about this, and this is going to put us through to the end of the video. Before I do that, make sure you're posting to Flip on this, and that you've posted for each of the prompts in Microsoft Flip for your reading responses. It's a significant part of the grade, and that, please do that. Looking at Dewey's, I'm going to jump around a little bit in the text, assuming you've not read it. Looking at generalization as a process, the idea is that when students are learning, when you were teaching, you want to integrate those isolated facts into existing knowledge. We know this, right? It's not just memorize the thing and you've got it, because if that is all you're doing, after about a week, depending on which study you're looking at, about 90% of that learning is gone. If you connect that new learning to existing schema, to existing learning, to existing ideas, then it tends to stick and students tend to actually learn it and remember it. So, as we're doing this, another example that Dewey gives us is using examples to illustrate general principles. I'll say that again and then give you an example. Using examples to illustrate general principles. So what this means is, here's the thing, give an example. Okay, fine, but that is in service of making sure facts are not isolated, making sure it's connected to existing neurons and wiring in our brain. And what comes to mind, not surprisingly, is using generative AI. I'll just say ChatGPT for the rest of our video, but could be any of the generative text AI tools. Getting examples for students. So you can say, here's my lesson plan, or here's the goal of my lesson. Give me 5 examples of how this can be relevant to a 6th grader. Give me 2 analogies for how this could make sense to a 9th grader. Use pop music as an example, or famous people. Give me an analogy that makes sense to a 3rd grader. Using these, right? So you're like, yes, examples, yes, analogies, yes, not facts in isolation, but actually leveraging this generative AI to create all those for you. And if you get 5 analogies, you're like, that's the one right there. Pokemon, my students love Pokemon. Yes, all right, there's an analogy. Or you could request it, Pokemon is all my 3rd graders are talking about. Give me an analogy for, I don't know, for some reason, water cycle. It's not a 3rd grade standard. Explain water cycle using an analogy of Pokemon, and you'll get that with generative AI. It might not be great. I don't see an obvious one right there. Um, but using those tools to get you the examples, or be like, I don't know what analogy or example I want, but give me analogies, 5 examples, and I'm going to choose the right one. And I think Dewey would be all in on generative AI for this use, which is a strange sentence. But what this actually reminds me of, and this movie holds up, is Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. It's one of the first 3 episodes I did on my other podcast, Heads Down, Two Thumbs Up, where Carla Silver and I, she is the executive director of leadership and design, and is a phenomenal human, does amazing leadership work, particularly around women in leadership. She and I talk about movies that talk about schools, and we did a whole episode on Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. And I think the movie holds up. There's definitely a couple cringy moments where it's like, oof, not really. But one of the parts that struck me so much is Beethoven in the mall. So, number of things I will own. Beethoven was not really in a mall. Malls don't really exist. But the playful idea of when they're in the mall, they're all hanging out, Beethoven goes in, and the keyboard salesman's like, "Do you play?" And he just gives them this look. And he starts playing, and then it does that montage where, like, Joan of Arc's doing the jazzercise class, Genghis Khan is destroying the sporting goods store, and then Beethoven's playing this giant concert, right? They're like cutting between all these things. Billy the Kid's like on the ice skating rink, and they're cutting between all the things, and they keep going, and then end up shutting down Beethoven. But he has this moment right when that's getting going, where he hits a keyboard, and he's like, whoa, hits it, and he's like, ah. And for me, with a background in music, I just see like all the gears turning of like, this tool can make hundreds of sounds in front of me. I think if Beethoven was alive in the 1980s, he absolutely would have been using a synthesizer and all the latest cutting edge music production tools. I don't think he'd be doing orchestral music right now. Maybe also, but I think he would have pushed what's possible with technology as far as possible. And I think a lot of, if we go down like the rabbit hole of just very generally calling them classical composers, it's like, oh, there's this kind of old-timey music and there's an orchestra, and it's just like kind of meh. But composers like Beethoven were like on the cutting edge of what you could do with those instruments, with that configuration of music. Like, that's what music was at the time. There was someone, it might have been Tchaikovsky. I did not care about music history. I have an undergrad in music, by the way. But around that time, like the early 1800s, they played a particular like note or melody or chord or something with kind of a more modern orchestra, and it like the notes were so dissonant that people legit started a riot. They're like, these notes, I can't stand it. And they like use like tent stakes to like put seating. It was like a new like outdoor amphitheater or something, and people like ripped the chairs out of the ground and like were throwing chairs at each other during this thing that most people just call classical music. And so all of this is to say that I think I'm almost doing my own Bill and Ted style talk, my own TED talk, my own Bill and Ted talk. There it is. If Dewey were alive today, I think he'd be all in on ChatGPT and be using it for all of these like cutting edge ways to go into deep thinking, to give examples, to make sure facts aren't learned in isolation, to make sure that when you're learning something, that it actually expands your understanding, that it's connected with real world situations. I think Dewey would be all in on experiential learning, on problem-based learning, on project-based learning, on using generative AI to create all kinds of examples, to the end of making sure that instruction, student responsibility, and deep critical thinking skills all come together. I think that's really, like, in a nutshell, kind of what Dewey was known for. And so I encourage you to look at what he's saying with a modern lens, and kind of imagine, like, if you were in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. Oh my gosh, do we need to do a version of that with, like, going back through time and finding educators, like kidnapping John Dewey and bringing him to a conference? That would be fantastic. I know ChatGPT can kind of, you can create a custom GPT where it takes on, like, a persona or various different, like, magic school or, like, school AI, a bunch of ones. You can, like, chat with a historical figure. It'd be fun to do a version of that with, like, educational figures. Uh, because I do believe that what Dewey is sharing continues to be relevant and continues to be surprisingly progressive education amidst current U.S. educational practices. And I encourage you to be kind of playful as you're reading this and imagine how he might use some of these brand new tools to further what he believes is best for students and for teachers. So that's what I got for you. You didn't think we were going to talk about Bill and Ted, did you? It's a good movie. It holds up. I encourage you to watch it at some point. Yeah. This is the end of our course. This is week 8. This is my last video for you. This course does come with lifetime tech support. So if you ever have tech questions, which computer should I get? I'll just send you to MacRumor's buyer's guide. But, just in general, if you have questions about presenting at a conference, want to review a conference proposal, or just whatever, feel free to reach out. You know how to find me. If you can spell my name, I'm on all the things. And looking forward to seeing your comments on each other for your own presentations from week 7 in the week 8 discussion board. And reach out if you have any other questions, and make sure everything gets in by Friday before midnight. Happy week 8, everybody. Happy UT 570, everyone.